A migrant worker, upon arriving in a foreign country, becomes a powerless slave. On a livestock farm, he spends 4 years in captivity until one day he gets a chance to escape into the desert. The film, based on true events, opens with a sand tornado scattering a herd of camels. At night in the same Arab desert, a shepherd named Najeeb drinks water from a trough alongside goats. The story shifts to the past, when Najeeb and Hakim, two Malayali immigrants, arrive in Saudi Arabia in search of work. They wander around the airport looking for the person who was supposed to meet them, but no one is there. When an elderly man approaches them, mistakenly thinking they are someone else, the migrants agree to go with him. He loads them into the back of his truck and drives them to his farm. Along the way, they marvel at the wonders of civilization, like a road tunnel. The Arab stops to drop off Hakim at a colleague's place despite the men's protests. Najeeb is taken to a remote desert area where he is handed over to his labor sponsor, the kafil. Lying down in a tent, Najeeb recalls how he used to work back home as a diver and river sand collector. He had dreamed of saving enough to get a work visa to the Middle East, where wages were much higher. He mortgaged his home to gather the needed money and handed it over to a middleman during a local festival, trusting him to arrange the visas. Soon, Najeeb was preparing for his flight. His mother Uma and wife Sainu were full of joy, imagining how they would use the first money he would send. His memories are cut short when the kafil wakes him up and orders him out of the tent, saying it's his place and that workers sleep outside. In the morning, Najeeb meets his work partner, an elderly shepherd who doesn't even remember his own name. He tells Najeeb to deliver fresh goat milk to the overseer, yelling when the newcomer accidentally drinks it. Najeeb begs the kafil to let him go, but the man doesn't understand Hindi and has no interest in releasing free labor. When the old Arab returns, Najeeb tries to explain that there's been a mistake. He shows a notebook with instructions on how to find the middleman he had paid, but the Arab tears out the pages and throws them away. Later, while baking flatbreads over coals, the Arabs invite Najeeb to share a meal with them. Having no other way to eat, the Indian man accepts. He later asks the old shepherd where the road to the city is, but the man simply replies, "Far away." That night, Najeeb tries to piece together the torn pages of his notebook and writes a letter to his family. As he writes, he remembers the dreams he and his wife once shared, how they planned for the future and prepared for the arrival of their child, who she is now pregnant with. He regrets not calling her after his arrival, as he had promised. He also recalls boarding the train with Hakim, full of hope as they began this journey. The next day, Najeeb learns that the owners forbid the use of water for washing after using the toilet. Water is too expensive. The old shepherd advises him to use sand instead. It's only hard for the first 10 years, he says. Then you get used to it. When a water truck arrives, Najeeb begs the driver to take him to the road. The owner hears this, becomes furious, and beats Najeeb. When Najeeb tries to defend himself, the old man grabs a rifle, threatens to shoot and bury him in the sand. No one would ever know. Lying unconscious, Najeeb dreams of his home in India, where access to water was better than in the desert. He remembers fishing, swimming in the river with his wife, who feared the deep water, unlike her husband, a strong swimmer. He also recalls their wedding and the simple joys of everyday life. Najeeb regains consciousness at sunset, crying from pain and disappointment. He asks the shepherd how long he has worked there, and the man replies that no one ever comes back once they've ended up in this place. In the morning, Najeeb is woken by the kafil and told to milk the goats. Lacking experience, he gets kicked in the chest. With no other choice and no skilled partner to rely on, Najeeb begins to learn how to milk the animals. He later herds them through the sand dunes. While breaking up a fight between two rams, he takes a brutal hit from one of them, followed by another blow to the head. The overseer, watching from atop a camel, tosses him a small bottle of water and orders him to go gather the herd. Due to his head injury, Najeeb can't perform the task. Suddenly, a baby goat approaches and begins bleeding, calling the herd back on its own. Overwhelmed by emotion, Najeeb hugs the little creature, the only being in this place that has shown him even a shred of kindness. Many days pass. Najeeb grows a beard, though he still cannot accept his fate. Finding shards of a broken car mirror, he tries to shave but fails. In a moment of despair, he runs toward a cliff, ready to jump. At the last moment, a massive vulture stops him. The bird is feeding on human remains at the bottom. Najeeb recognizes the dead man as the old shepherd who had likely tried to escape. The vultures attack Najeeb, driving him away from their meal. Out of desperation, Najeeb finally decides to escape. While grazing the herd, he starts running toward the mountains, but the old Arab spots him through a spyglass and chases after him on a camel. Catching up to the runaway, the old man fires a warning shot, forcing Najeeb to fall, and then beats him, breaking his leg. That night, the fugitive is tied up to prevent another escape attempt. Even when untied, Najeeb has no strength left to try again. The most he can do is crawl to the trough to drink. Najeeb continues his miserable existence as a shepherd's slave. One day, while with the herd, he experiences a rare phenomenon in the desert: rain, even with hail. They take shelter under a rock, and there, Najeeb realizes how similar he has become to the goats. Passing through a crevice to the other side of the mountain, Najeeb suddenly encounters Hakim, another powerless slave, though working not on one farm but in various places. They don't have time to plan an escape before Hakim's master arrives to pick him up. Before parting, the two agree to meet again. To avoid suspicion, they communicate through notes without approaching each other. Najeeb has to chase down a paper blown away by the wind, all while trying not to be seen by the Arab. From the note, he learns that Hakim has a plan to escape with Hadiri, an African companion in misery who has spent a year in slavery and learned the lay of the land. The three of them meet to discuss the plan. Hadiri knows that soon the master's daughter will get married and he will be away. Left unsupervised, the slaves can escape, and Hadiri is confident he can lead them through the desert. After agreeing, the captives return to their respective farms. At night, Najeeb sits in the pen, watching the Arab hosting guests around a fire in celebration of his daughter's wedding. The master even allows the captive a piece of meat. The next day, all the bosses leave for the wedding, leaving Najeeb alone. First, he strips naked and uses precious water to bathe, reliving a long-forgotten feeling. Then he changes into his old clothes, carefully kept in a bag. Due to months of hunger, the pants are now too big, so he ties them with a rope and heads out for another escape, after feeding the livestock one last time. When his companions arrive, Najeeb takes his bag, though Hadiri advises against it. Without it, they look like regular workers, while the bag raises suspicion. The escapees set off, trekking through the desert until night falls. Spotting a camp, Hadiri goes down a dune to steal some water, but attracts attention, and the campers open fire. The former slaves barely manage to flee in the dark, losing Najeeb's bag in the process. Waking up in the middle of the endless desert the next morning, they realize they veered off course during the chaos. Hadiri stays optimistic and chooses a new direction, but the Indians begin to lose strength and confidence. In the heat, they start hallucinating, at one point thinking a camel is drinking from a lake, only to find a dead animal that died of thirst. Later during prayer, the escapees encounter a migration of sand snakes. Hadiri manages to pull Hakim aside just in time, but Najeeb remains standing in the middle of dozens of slithering snakes, frozen in place so as not to draw attention. Only after they've passed does he collapse in terror. But the troubles don't end there. Walking barefoot through the sand causes Najeeb's feet to swell. Hadiri gives him his vest to use as makeshift socks to ease the pain. The slaves continue their journey, tormented by heat, thirst, and hunger, clinging only to the hope of finding freedom. Hakim collapses from exhaustion, and Hadiri carries him on his shoulder. Soon after, Najeeb also falls, unable to go on. Hadiri does his best to help them rest, even shielding them from the sun with his own body. Another day passes. The next morning, Hakim spots a gleaming city in the distance and runs toward it with the last of his strength, fighting off his friends as they try to stop him. In his delirium, he begins eating sand, thinking it's sugar. Realizing his mistake, he falls to the ground with a bloodied mouth and dies in Najeeb's arms. But even this isn't the worst that awaits them. A sandstorm approaches. Hadiri pulls the grieving Indian away, leaving Hakim's body buried in the dunes. After the storm passes, they dig themselves out and continue mourning their friend. After resting through the night, they move on. But Najeeb grows weaker. Hadiri supports him, but his foot injuries worsen. Najeeb collapses, emotionally broken. Seeing the lizard, a sure sign of nearby water, Hadiri gives him his shoes. Climbing a dune, they spot an oasis ahead. Najeeb runs toward it, but Hadiri stops him just before the water. After dehydration, one must drink carefully. He gives Najeeb water slowly and in small sips, allowing his body to adjust. While the Indian rests in the shade of the trees, Hadiri explores the area and finds an empty bottle. Overjoyed, he whistles a tune through it to lift their spirits. Regaining strength, they continue forward. Hadiri finds a candy wrapper, proof that people must be nearby. Soon after, they spot tire tracks, but at some point, they lose the path. The next morning, Najeeb wakes up to find that Hadiri has gone ahead alone, leaving him a bottle of water. Not built for the desert, Najeeb was only slowing him down. Abandoned, the man limps on in sorrow and solitude. Once more, using the last of his strength, he crawls forward and drops the empty bottle, which rolls ahead with a sharp clatter right onto the asphalt of a highway cutting through the desert. In the evening, a truck drives by, carefully swerving around the escaped slave. The next day, Najeeb tries to stop another truck, but the driver refuses to help out of disgust. Only a car following behind pulls over to pick up the desperate man. The driver calms the frightened Indian and offers him water. After driving him into the city, he drops Najeeb off. Exhausted, Najeeb wanders the streets, drawing looks of disgust from the locals. Eventually, he finds a Malayali restaurant owned by a fellow countryman named Kunjika. The staff there help their compatriot, clean him up, and begin figuring out what to do next. The situation is complicated by the fact that Najeeb has no passport. The Arab had taken his documents upon arrival. While Najeeb recovers, Kunjika makes phone calls using the numbers Najeeb provides, informing his family of the good news. 4 years after disappearing, her husband and their son has been found alive. On the phone, Najeeb hears the cries of his son, the child he has never met. Once he's well enough, Najeeb is taken to a police station to sort out his paperwork. There, among the photos of wanted criminals, he spots a picture of Hadiri, though no one knows what he may have done. Najeeb is then transferred to a jail where undocumented workers are held. Arabs who had arranged work visas for migrants come there to collect their escaped workers, openly beating them in front of others. Soon, Najeeb's former master shows up, terrifying him with the prospect of being dragged back to the farm. The Arab stares at him closely, recognizes him, but does not take him. A fellow inmate explains to Najeeb that the man has no documents for him. In reality, Najeeb and Hakim had been kidnapped right outside the airport. Otherwise, Najeeb would have been reclaimed instantly. After 3 months in jail, Najeeb and other abandoned workers are deported back home. They are herded onto the plane like goats into a pen. Standing at the top of the boarding ramp, Najeeb turns around to cast one final, pain-filled glance. That's where the film ends.